My father died on a Tuesday. Rain hammered against the church windows, like the sky itself had come to mourn him. But inside, there were no tears on my face, only numbness. Because grief is strange like that. Sometimes it doesn't come as sobbing or screaming. Sometimes it comes as silence. As I sat in the second row of the funeral chapel, staring at the polished oak casket, holding the man who had raised me alone for 24 years, I could feel every eye in the room sliding toward me. Not with sympathy, with curiosity. Because everyone knew what came next. The reading of the will, and everyone expected me to inherit everything. After all, I was his only child. Or so I thought. My father, Richard Whitmore, wasn't just wealthy. He was old money wealthy. The kind of wealthy where people didn't ask how much something cost. They asked if it was worth buying at all. He owned 3 properties, a successful logistics company, investment accounts I'd never even seen, and enough savings to ensure no one in our family would ever struggle again. He had built it all after my mother died when I was 2. He raised me himself, never remarried, never even dated seriously, at least not that I knew of. So when we walked into the mahogany-paneled office of his attorney the day after the funeral, I wasn't thinking about money. I was thinking about closure. But the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was wrong. Because sitting there, legs crossed, wearing black designer heels and a smile too polished for a funeral, was Vanessa, my father's friend. The woman who had appeared in his life only 8 months earlier. The woman 27 years younger than him. The woman I had warned him about. And beside her sat a man I had never seen before. Tall, broad shoulders, smug expression. Vanessa looked at me and said, "Oh, good, you made it." Like she was hosting brunch. I ignored her and turned to the attorney. "Why is she here?" The attorney adjusted his glasses. "Miss Whitmore, please sit. We'll begin." I didn't like his tone, not one bit. He opened the folder, cleared his throat, and began reading. "To my beloved companion Vanessa Carter, I leave my primary residence, the beach house in Malibu, and the sum of $2 million. My breath caught. What? The attorney continued. "To her son Derek Carter, I leave my classic car collection and $1 million. I stared. Her son? Since when did she have a son? Then came the final line. "To my daughter Emily Whitmore, I leave my love, my blessings, and the hope that she understands my decisions." That was it. No house, no inheritance, no company, nothing. The room spun. Vanessa gasped theatrically, hand over her mouth. "Oh, Richard, he was always so generous." Then Derek laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Guess Daddy had favorites after all." I stood so fast, my chair crashed backward. There has to be a mistake. The attorney looked uncomfortable. "There is no mistake. This will was signed and notarized 6 weeks ago. My father would never do this." Vanessa tilted her head. "You clearly didn't know him as well as you thought." That was the moment something inside me broke. Not because of the money, because of the betrayal. Because the man who raised me, who taught me loyalty, sacrifice, and family, had apparently discarded me for a woman he'd known less than a year. I left before I said something unforgivable. But as I reached the door, the attorney called my name. "Miss Whitmore, there is one final item." I turned. He slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "This was to be delivered to you privately, only after the will was read." Vanessa's smile faltered. I took the envelope. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a handwritten note, in my father's handwriting. It said only, "They'll think they won. Don't trust anyone. Follow the key." A small brass key fell from the envelope into my palm. And suddenly, I knew. My father had not abandoned me. This was a game, and he had left me the first clue. That night, I sat on the floor of my apartment staring at the key. It was old, brass, engraved with the number 317. I turned it over again and again. Then it hit me. Storage unit. The next morning I drove across town to the only storage company my father had ever used. Unit 317, the clerk repeated. Registered under Richard Whitmore. My heart pounded. I unlocked the unit. The metal door rattled upward. Inside sat one thing. A black fireproof safe. The key fit perfectly. Inside was a thick stack of documents. And another letter. Emily, if you're reading this, then everything went according to plan. Vanessa is not who she says she is. Neither is Derek. I discovered 6 months ago that they targeted wealthy widowers. They manipulate, isolate, and exploit men for inheritance. By the time I learned the truth, I was already sick, terminal. Too late to stop what they had set in motion, unless I played along. So I did. I changed my will publicly. I let them believe they had won. Because greedy people become careless when they think the game is over. Inside this safe is proof of fraud, wiretaps, account transfers, false identities, and evidence linking them to 2 previous victims. Take this to the police. And Emily, the real inheritance is protected where they can never touch it. Ask Mr. Holloway for the red folder. I love you. Dad. I burst into tears right there on the concrete floor. Not because I was rich, not because I'd been right about Vanessa, but because even dying, my father had protected me. Holloway was his oldest business partner. And when I showed up at his office with the letter, he looked at it once and nodded. So Richard timed this perfectly. He opened his safe, pulled out a red folder. Inside were trust documents, stock certificates, property deeds, transfer papers. My father had quietly moved almost every major asset into an irrevocable trust 18 months earlier. Beneficiary? Me. The public will? Contained barely 15% of his total estate. Vanessa had inherited scraps. Expensive scraps. But scraps. The real fortune, over $38 million, was mine. Legally untouchable. I laughed. Actually laughed. My father had outplayed them all, but we weren't done yet, because now we had proof. The police investigation moved fast, too fast for Vanessa to react. Turns out, Derek wasn't her son. He was her partner. They had used fake identities in 3 states. 2 previous wealthy men had changed their wills before mysteriously dying within months. The police reopened both cases. When officers arrested Vanessa outside the Malibu house she thought she owned, neighbors said she screamed for nearly 10 minutes. Derek tried to flee. He made it as far as the airport. Not far enough. Both were charged with fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and eventually murder. News stations picked up the story. Widow scam ring exposed. Millionaire father outsmarts con artist before death. But none of that mattered to me. Because the only headline I cared about was this. My father never betrayed me. He saved me, even after death. Months later I stood in his office, my office now. Sunlight poured across the desk where he'd spent half his life building an empire. And for the first time since his death, I smiled. There was one final letter in the trust package, one I hadn't opened until then. It read, Emily, if you're sitting in my office, then you found everything. Good. That means I taught you well. Money comes and goes. Businesses rise and fall. But character is everything. Anyone can inherit wealth. Very few can deserve it. So if you have this, it means I believed you did. Make me proud. Love. Dad. I folded the letter carefully, set it in the top drawer, and whispered, I will. Because they thought my dad left me nothing. They thought they had stolen everything. But in the end, he left me far more than money. He left me the truth. He left me justice. And he left me the final victory. They thought I was the daughter who got nothing. Turns out, I was the only one who got everything.